And this month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Super Inframan, Allison Cook, and Eric Hervin. Thank you all so very much for your incredible support.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? This is a show I haven't done in a while. This is a movie review, podcast review. I don't even know what to call it because it's just media review, fictional media review show with Chris Ernst.
Media Roundup. Yes, hello.
Media Roundup. That's not bad. I think initially it was movie review show, but I also want to be able to talk about other stuff that aren't just movies, TV shows, podcasts, things like that.
Right. Content. I think that's what they call it in the industry.
Entertainment.
Sweet content. Entertainment content.
Hopefully entertaining.
Right.
So, since I haven't done one of these in a while, there's a lot of stuff I've seen that's been really cool, and maybe some stuff to avoid. Actually, what I was watching right before we started, because I haven't seen it literally since the 80s, was Repo Man.
What a great film. Absolutely.
I didn't remember this at all. We did on the last Exit for the Lost. The last show we recorded was songs that appeared on movie or TV soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And my co-host Fidget's like, you got to put something from Repo Man in there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I grabbed TV Party, which incidentally is a different version than the actual album version of TV Party.
Oh, than the Black Flag album version?
Yeah.
You're right. It is.
It has different lyrics and different production.
Yeah.
But so I did that, and she's, well, you love Repo Man, right? I'm like, I don't remember Repo Man at all. And she goes, thinking about it, you need to watch Repo Man. Mm-hmm. And now I'm seeing the whole alien in the trunk thing and everything, and I'm going, I see what she's talking about now. All right.
Oh, it's great. I love Repo Man, and I love the director Alex Cox is one of my favorite directors of all time. He also did Sid and Nancy, and he's a terrific director. And if nobody's ever seen his film Straight to Hell, it's one of my favorite midnight movies that one could ever see. It's got
Joe
Strummer from The Clash.
Courtney Love in that?
Courtney Love is in. I think she might be in that too, but she's also in Sid and Nancy, which is his biopic of Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen.
So there's actually two versions of Straight to Hell.
There are, really?
Yes. Because I don't know how I came across it, but then I found out that there were two completely different versions of the movie. I think there's a very different director's cut or something.
That probably is true, and I should know this, being that midnight movies are kind of my bag. Yeah.
I have not watched either version, but I was able to find both versions. And, just scanning through them, I'm like, these are really different movies.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, there probably was a director's cut. I don't think I've actually seen that. The only one that I've seen is the first, the original 86 version. But yeah, I think there was one. It was, you're right, it's ringing the bells, like Straight to Hell Redux or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, now that you've reminded me, I have to go and check that out. It's one of my favorites.
So it's an extended cut titled Straight to Hell Returns.
There you go.
Featuring additional footage and digitally enhanced picture quality.
Yeah. Here's a piece of really fun trivia about Alex Cox, is that he actually was one of the first people that was considered to direct Three Amigos, if you guys remember.
Yeah.
If anybody remembers that comedy, that 80s comedy classic with Dustin Hoffman, Martin Short, and Chevy Chase. And if you can imagine Alex Cox directing that, for anybody who knows Alex Cox, that would have been one wild movie.
So I'm almost to the end of that. I think I have 20 minutes left by the time we started this. But Repo Man was definitely fun. Straight to Hell, is that, paranormal themed at all?
It's just more it's more weird.
Okay.
I'd say it's kind of like a spaghetti western, but all of his films are kind of absurdist, so have that that bent that sort of feels, I don't know, preternatural in the same way that sometimes Lynch does, even though it isn't overtly preternatural. But it's much more of like a comedy kind of cult midnight movie. In the spaghetti western, sense. I think out of all his films,
Courtney Love is in that one too.
Yeah. I think Repo Man probably has the most sort of high strangeness in it.
Okay, all right. So I watched this Stars series called Now Apocalypse.
I don't know that. Tell me about it.
I don't know whether to recommend it or not. It's by the director who did the Doom Generation.
Okay. Greg Arakai? I'm mispronouncing his last name. Yeah.
It is, okay, so you know what? I should pull up the title or the descriptor on IMDb, and you'll totally understand why I thought I should watch this.
Yeah.
And it is interesting. It'd be great if my phone would connect there so I can pull it up. I don't have a search bar. Oh, they moved the search bar on IMDb. That's cool. So obviously instead of Apocalypse Now, it's Now Apocalypse.
Right, Now Apocalypse. Yeah, I get that.
It's one season. It was definitely supposed to have more than one season, so it just kind of cuts in the middle of the story. But it says, let's see, I can't read it because my phone is not cooperating. While on quest to pursue love, sex, and fame with his friends in Los Angeles, Ulysses' premonitory dreams make him question the possible presence of a dark and monstrous conspiracy.
That sounds great.
So, yeah, exactly. And it, like in the picture of it is a bunch of them standing, and then there's Lizard Man standing at the end, and it's billed as sort of a comedy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I had actually, so this, everything I do seems to connect to something else I'm doing. I had watched a show on Amazon, a movie on Amazon called In the Shadow of the Moon. And I was looking up who some of the people were, and one of the girls was in Now Apocalypse, and I went, oh, I never watched that. I should watch that next. So that's how I started watching Now Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So one of the reviews, I think, hit it dead on the head. They said, I'm not sure if I'm watching the best written softcore porn ever or a sort of so-so drama.
That totally makes sense for Greg Arakai, and I'm probably still mispronouncing his last name. His stuff has always been had super porny, and I'd say that not as a bad thing. That's part of his style and part of the subversive nature of, because he was doing basically doing queer films before and doing them in a very revolutionary kind of punk rock way before a lot of people were. So that totally makes sense, but it's too bad. Does it have a lot of Fordian? It sounds like it could be a cool, I don't know, Discordian sort of weird type of thing. So with the sex in it too, even. Yeah, and I mean, there is a lot of sex in it. So that's warning number one for people. Yeah, there is a lot of sex in this movie, and a lot of it's weird sex too. It's not super explicit. There's plenty of nudity, but it's mostly boobs and butts. It's not, like I said, not super explicit, but I mean, there's a gay sex scene maybe 30 seconds into the first episode. Yeah, that would completely make sense. He's been doing, like I said, queer cinema for a long time, so it totally makes sense. So if that type of stuff bothers you, do not watch this, because, I mean, there's sex of all kinds, but there's also a decent amount of gay sex, because the main character is primarily gay. Yes. But it kind of pokes fun at millennials, and there's this whole underlying synchronicity thing going on throughout the whole thing, mainly with this character. And it's kind of cool. I wanted to know where he was going with it, and the very end scene is both hilarious and horrifying at the same time. And then, of course, it just ends, and you're like, where was this going? Where were they going? Because it got canceled. So, right. They're only they're 27-minute episodes, and there's 10 of them, so it's a fairly quick watch. Yeah, and I'll totally check that out. A lot of people hated it, and it seemed to be a love-hate type of thing. And I'm like, I enjoyed it. At no point did I want to turn it off, but I was really hoping it was going to end. Yeah, and not just get canceled. And of course, it just got canceled. But yeah, there's this whole Lizard Man thing going on with Lizard Men having sex with mostly homeless people. Nice.
And him having all these dreams about the end of the world and stuff, and his best friend is just going to him, you're just smoking too much pot,
Yeah, no, that sounds good. That sounds like it's in his oeuvre too. I'll have to check it out. It also reminds me a little bit, even though it probably is very dissimilar to. Did you ever see Russian Doll?
I watched one episode.
Yeah, I don't know if you weren't able to didn't get into it.
Yeah, the characters kind of grated on my nerves. Like I was kind of curious where it was going, but the characters grated on me, and I said, I'll finish this later.
Sure. If you can stick with it, it's pretty cool. I mean, it essentially, and I guess spoilers a little bit here, so earmuffs people for the next 10 seconds if you don't want to hear it. It's essentially kind of like a time travel piece, like and it's cool. It's like the Groundhog Day, infinite
you get that right away.
Yeah, and it gets good though. Like there's a little bit of a twist on it, and it's the reason why it sounded a little bit similar to Now Apocalypse is just because it's sort of it's a little bit weird. It's supernatural, but it's also comedic and very stylized too. And from like a color production standpoint, it's kind of a beautiful one. But I could definitely see like. The characters being a little grating. They're kind of like stylized New York hipsters.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, with Now Apocalypse, he's kind of poking fun at millennials.
Sounds like it, yeah.
With some interesting points thrown in about society in general. Which was, I was fine with that. Like I said, I was entertained. I just recommend it with caution because, like I said, it is loaded with sex and nudity. That is a big prime part of what the story's about, but then it has these weird undercurrents, and Henry Rollins is in it.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I didn't know about that. I'm definitely gonna check it out. I really do like Doom Generation and a lot of his films.
He's only
That's a good suggestion.
Henry's only in it for about 30 seconds, but it's one of the synchronicities is that he picks up a book from this UFO author who is plays by Henry Rollins. And then they go to this other city, and it just happens to be a book signing by him. And he's like, "We got to go." And the girl's like, "No." Yeah. And then you see them walking into the bookstore, and she's like, "I can't believe you're making me do this." But they also treat the UFO crew, like all the people there have like tinfoil hats on and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That sounds great. Did you ever see that Henry Rollins film that he did? It was probably from maybe about 5 years ago. It was this... it was kind of like a horror, dark comedy, but he was, or actually not super comedic, but he was playing Judas, like an immortal, Judas from the Bible, but as like this sort of like immortal demon. It's interesting, yeah. And he's like living in L.A. and he's like I think dealing with his daughter, like having daughter problems. I forget the name of it. I think it was on Netflix. I'll try to search it so I can get the name for people. But it was one of those like weird ones that just was kind of worth a watch. Huh. And I probably just spoiled it by giving the plot away. But
most of these things, the plot is given away in IMDb.
Very true. Yes.
And that's so the other one that led me to Now Apocalypse, the In the Shadow of the Moon. Like there's all these weird interconnections in everything I'm watching because I just finished watching the second season of American Gods, whose main character is called Shadow Moon.
Yep.
And then I'm flipping through looking. I literally put in a Netflix. I think it was Netflix time travel movie, and the first thing that came up was In the Shadow of the Moon, and I went, so Shadow Moon? All right, fine.
Yeah. That's Jim Mickles' newest film. That's cool. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet, but I like some of his earlier stuff that he's done. He's a filmmaker that's done some cool stuff. He did like Stake Land was his first big film.
I know the name.
But I don't know. What did you think of it?
I thought it was incredible until the end, and then it was absolute garbage.
Interesting. Okay.
So that through the entire thing, without giving any spoilers away, through the entire thing, they go on and on about how, because it's a time travel movie, it's very upfront. It plays out like a crime drama.
Interesting.
And they keep going on about how you cannot alter the past. And then in the end of the movie, it's that they went back to alter the past.
Oh no, it's terrible.
And like every review I read, people are like, "That was great until the end. What the hell happened?" You know?
Yeah. Huh.
So it's
I'll have to watch it anyway. Yeah, it's on my list that I have to catch up with.
It's really, really well. I mean, it's a fantastically done movie. It's extremely well done. It's just that ending was horrid. And it kind of brings up these ethical questions, which I think if they had left them as ethical questions would have been a lot better than if they were kind of picking a side. So it has sort of a political agenda too.
I see. Okay, interesting. Huh.
And I just kind of I was like, wow, I really liked this. Why did it have to end like that?
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I mean, some of the earlier stuff that he did, like Stakeland, is an interesting riff on like the vampire vampire post-apocalypse. It's like, do you ever see that?
Yes, I don't remember it very well, but now that you say that, I do remember it.
Yeah, and it's got Kelly McGillis, the actress. You know, she was in a lot of '80s films. Top Gun, Witness. She plays an older nun in it. And then he did this other film called We Are What We Are, which is essentially like about cannibalistic family. It's got this actor Bill Sage in it. It's very good, or I liked it at least.
Yeah, like I said, this was great until the ending. Yeah. The ending literally was a story-sized plot hole.
That's interesting. I'll have to watch it and let you know what I think.
Yeah,
I'm trying to picture that. Yeah.
So, what ones have you seen?
So recently, and again, these all aren't. I would say maybe within like the past decade or something like that. 'Cause I don't know if it's completely new.
No, I'm not worried about that.
There are these two directors. I'm going to mispronounce their names probably really terribly. Helene Katat and Bruno Forzare, and they came out with these two films. The first one's called The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears.
Oh,
it's from 2013. I want to say you can get it on like Prime. I think it's out there streaming, and it's like if anybody's familiar with the giallo genre, which is Italian slasher, associated with Dario Argento and stuff like that. Very stylized, and it's essentially that. It's this stylized kind of slasher film, hyper colorized, like really very formally, like it looks like if people are familiar with like Jodorowsky or a lot of sort of these 70s genre films that had this really distinct style to them. It's a really cool film, and then they ended up making this sort of second one, which is a bit more of a spaghetti western takeoff, but again, like pitch perfect in terms of how it was done and the aesthetic. And that film's called Let the Corpses Tan. And I think you can find both of them streaming, at least for a rental. I tried to pick stuff people can find, but they're these really cool filmmakers. They're French and Italian, I think. And I got to see the Let the Corpses Tan on the big screen at a film festival a couple years ago, and it was awesome. And Strange Color of Your Body's Tears is great as well.
Okay. Have you seen The Dig?
The Dig? No, I haven't seen The Dig. Somebody was just telling me about that the other day.
Yeah, that is on Netflix, or Netflix.
I think it is on Netflix. Yeah, it's British, right? It's
about an archaeological dig at the just pre-World War II. And the thing is, not a lot happens in it. However, it is shot so well that the 2 hours go by very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It is beautifully shot, and it's about a woman who thinks there's a major find in one of the mounds on her property, and the museum doesn't want anything to do with it. So she hires she hires a amateur archaeologist, essentially, and he digs up this ship that is a major find, and then the museum wants to come in and claim it as their own. That's really good. So does it get into any of sort of the lore of it, or is it mainly become it's mostly
kind of a drama?
It's the drama about the dig itself. It's a true story.
Yeah.
So it's just how this guy did all the work and then ended up with none of the credit until just recently.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting, though. What is it? Do they like go into the mound or like have any depictions of the dig?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's called the dig.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a large ship that they realize is a burial tomb.
Right. Interesting.
So but like I said, it's just such a pleasant movie to watch in a sense. Like the way it's shot and everything is it's produced so well, and it's a good story on top of it.
That's well, I'll have to watch that. Yeah, that's somebody who's telling me about that, particularly having to do with mounds and knowing my strange obsession with mounds.
Yes.
Another one that I would suggest if people haven't seen it that is definitely not calming, but is Psycho Goreman. Is this film? Did you seen that?
Yes, we talked about this.
Did we talk about it?
Yeah, off air we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both liked
What do you think about it? What did you? I can't remember what you taught. What you were saying. I finally got to see it.
Yeah, you watched it. I think right before we had talked, and we both loved it.
No, it's great. So Psycho Goreman is this film that this guy Stephen Kotansky who did this film called The Void, which people should also check out. It's a really cool
Lovecraftian.
kind of Lovecraftian indie horror film, and it's interesting too because like I guess knowing a little bit of the trivia about the film. When they were making it, they were getting like their budget as they went along. You can almost see that in the film. Like the budget gets a little bit better and better. Anyway, it's a cool film, especially for people that like Lovecraftian type stuff. Worth a watch. Well, Psycho Goreman is it's essentially like a trauma film. I don't know, somewhere between trauma, Dungeons and Dragons and early what's his name? Early Peter Jackson, Dead Alive.
With a touch of Gwar mixed in.
With Gwar, right. That's how you described it. It was if Gwar made a film, yeah.
Well, Gwar have made films, and they weren't that good, so...
Right. If Gwar made a proper cinematic
Well,
film.
they had the costuming of Gwar, is what it was.
Yes. Yeah. No, I enjoyed that. I thought that was it's right up my alley in terms of weird culty Midnight Madness films.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. I actually didn't like it as much as I expected from the trailer.
Oh, yeah.
But the concept is basically that this obnoxious 10-year-old girl digs up this diamond or whatever that controls this demon, which is Psycho Goreman. And he...
Who looks like Odorous Urungus.
Right. And he just he wakes up because he's been imprisoned by the diamond, and he's like, oh, I'm going to kill you all. And then she realizes she has control of him, and she's like, okay, do jumping jacks and clap your hands. And he's meting out these horrible threats to them while he's doing this.
Yes. Yeah. And it's doesn't it end up being that he's not just... it's not like he's a demon. He's like a demon alien.
Yes.
That's obviously there's, the mothership someplace too, or the Galactic Alliance that, ends up playing into it.
Right. Yeah. And it was definitely entertaining.
It was entertaining. It was kind of like the perfect for what I wanted to see at the time, which was something that was kind of stupid but really entertaining, and lots of gory, culty action. It was pretty good.
One of the ones that's also not paranormal themed that I would recommend, especially if you like really violent movies, would be All of My Friends Are Dead.
Oh yeah, I haven't. It's another one that's in my queue, but I have not watched it yet.
It's a Polish film. It's on Netflix. It's both dubbed and subtitled, and man, are they different.
Yeah.
Because I leave the subtitles on and then put the dubbing on, and I'm like, this is two different conversations. Sometimes it's really close, but other times, wow. But it's an amusing movie, and then the end is just insane. And it's that was something. Okay. Excessively violent, at the end at least.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that. I think is it like it's there's no supernatural. It's not like a slasher or anything like that. It's
it's all basically accidents at the end.
Right.
But,
interesting.
But a fun sort of thing. Like I said, there's nothing paranormal about it. It's just this crazy ending to a sort of fun movie.
Yeah, those ones that I was referring to earlier before, the Helene Katat and Bruno Forzari, those aren't necessarily supernatural, but they still have that, kind of in the same way that, like, some Argento films are like there's no supernatural content, but it's like it still has that weird otherworldly feel to it.
Right. One of the ones that's definitely supernatural is Dark Encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched that?
I have not watched Dark Encounter. Nope.
Dark Encounter masquerades as a typical alien movie and is not.
Yeah.
Someone on Twitter, I forget who off the top of my head right now, recommended it to me, and I was like, okay, cool. And I got it, and I'm starting to watch it going, this is just a typical, like, alien abduction movie. There's nothing really special about this. And luckily I kept with it because it gets into the super high strangeness by the end. It's a very dark movie to begin with. But yeah, the twist to it is it definitely lines up with someone who has some cue about what's really going on with this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because I don't want to spoil it by saying what it is, but it's not just a standard alien abduction thing.
Interesting. Oh yeah, I'll have to look at that then. Yeah, that's I hadn't heard about that, or I think I had heard the name of that one because it came out like really recently, right? Did it like 2019, 2018 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember exactly when. It wasn't brand new when I watched it, so
right.
I was just like, like I said, it was almost like, why did they recommend this to me? This is typical alien abduction type of stuff. This is not my...
Sure.
And then at the end, I'm like, now I understand. That was awesome.
Yeah,
a lot of people hated
something
it.
Happened. Right.
Yeah, a lot of people hated it for the same reason, that it didn't go where they thought it was going to go.
I find that is that's often why I like things more than anything else. There was one that I saw... probably is from a few years ago, that I actually didn't know anything about it going into it, and I was pleasantly surprised, which is called The Ritual. Did you see that?
Oh, I love The Ritual.
Yeah. Really, really good. And I didn't know much about it going into it, which made it even more enjoyable. I mean, it's essentially like it starts out like kind of the normal, a bunch of buddies. I want to say it's English or Scottish or something like that.
It takes place in like Norway or Sweden.
Yeah, it takes place, but I think they're English dudes. It takes place, in really, really northern Scandinavia, so Norway or Sweden, and it's like these guys are doing this ritual where they, ritual meaning like, every year they meet and they go on this camping, hiking trip. And, that normal sort of story, they are in the woods and, they kind of meet, start seeing strange things happening. And I don't want to say too much to spoil it either, but, it essentially creates this like pagan Lovecraftian
mix,
cult mix, but really the way in which they depict like the elder gods and the to use the term pagan, which I know isn't really accurate, but pagan worship, it's just pretty interesting and unique. I really liked it. The design of, I guess, the creature design too, I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the creature was incredible.
Yeah. But it was done well, like, and it really just takes place in the woods, but shot in this really I think artful way that creates a lot of tension with very little, very sparse, minimal film.
That's what I was going to say. It's a very tense watch.
That's a really good way of describing it. Yeah.
One of the things that people kept telling me to watch that I finally watched was the Kettering incident.
Oh yeah, how was that? I haven't watched that. No.
It would be great if they do the second season.
Was that it? Oh no.
It is really interesting. I could totally see why people recommended it. And I guess, if they end it right where it ends, it's kind of up to you to put an ending on it type of thing. But they were planning on a second season, and so far it has not happened. It's not technically canceled yet, even though it was like 2016 when the first season came out.
Right.
But it's about this girl who goes missing, and the girl who was with her when she went missing goes back to that town like 20 years later, and she's trying to find out if there's any more information because I think someone else goes missing or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it gets very paranormal as it goes.
Very nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Like, it's good, but it's not great because it kind of just ends mid-story,
It's too bad. I mean, these ones that I think that's, I mean, I could go on forever about that cancel culture, and how you never get to have these finished, pieces.
Yeah.
It would be great if there was a way that you were able to, even if it meant limiting, and again, this goes into money-making deals at media level, which goes beyond logic. But so you could let these people, figure out ways that they're going to finish. I mean, it's I'm not the only one who's ever said this. People have been saying this forever about canceled series, but give forewarning so the writers can do something that for the fans will feel at least like some sort of capstone on it.
Right. And occasionally you get that, shows like Farscape or what's the other one that they brought back? Sixth. No, is it Sixth? Sixth Sense? No, that's the movie. What the hell is it called?
I don't know. I mean, Farscape, of course. If people have not watched Farscape, if you aren't watching Farscape by now, you should.
Yeah, Farscape was fantastic. There was another one that they brought back, and they did, I want to say they did like one episode, and then they decided to give it one more season. And it was really good. It was about people who could connect across the world with different senses.
Oh, right. Yes. My wife and I are watching that. It was done by the Wachowskis.
Yes.
Sense8.
Sense8. I was close. I said Sixth Sense. Sense8.
That's right. Yeah, Sense8. No, they totally did the same thing with Sense8, and it really sucks.
So, but I mean, they at least got to finish it.
Oh, right. No, that's right. They did finish it, of course. Yeah.
Because it got canceled, and everyone freaked out.
Because it got canceled, and then it came back. Yes.
And then you have the rare cases of things like The Expanse, which, honestly, The Expanse is one of the best space opera shows ever.
It is.
And that got canceled off Sci-Fi only to have Amazon pick it up. And they've been saying, Amazon said you have 2 more seasons, so they just finished one of those seasons. But the people who run it said, we still have a couple more books after that, so we're going to try and find it a new home.
Which is great. I mean, I think that having something like that, either a film or especially a series that can continue to, exist over and over, and have the same core creative team, but at different studios, nobody cares. Like we as fans, we just want to see the vision completed.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, with all these television stations, it's not about art. It's about making money. So we don't care if your art's incomplete if it's not making us money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, what else is new?
Yeah. Anything else come to mind for you?
Well, recently I was kind of going back into the archives of some of my favorite films, and so I rewatched Near Dark, which is a 1987 vampire film directed by Catherine Bigelow, starring Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton. And Natasha Henstridge? No, not another Natasha. So anyway, it's a really good kind of like, vampire films before they were popular, and they essentially do this like, it's kind of like a Drifter, almost like I don't know if do you remember watching that ever?
Vaguely, I know I've seen it, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
any details.
It's a good one to go back and revisit because it's really really stripped down, kind of like nomadic drifter. I don't want to say it's post-apocalyptic, but it's got this real kind of like desert feel to it. And I think because this was prior to vampires being in any way marketable, they were able to do something that's kind of really interesting and not your usual kind of vampire film. It's a lot like more grounded and I'd say brutal than what we're used to. There's a lot less sexiness, or it's a different kind of sexiness, let's say. Oh. Yeah, definitely. It's about essentially. I mean, I don't want to. I'm loath to give too many spoilers, but it's essentially kind of like a road movie. It's about like this band of nomadic vampires and this young guy who gets caught up with them. It's kind of like Lost Boys. I think the only analog would be Lost Boys, maybe, because it came out around a similar time, but it's very different.
I do vaguely remember that now.
Yeah.
So a couple I watched sort of together because someone recommended one, and then a bunch of people said, "Oh, if you like that, you also need to watch this." So the first one was called Cosmos, and this
Cosmos, was it a film or a show?
Yeah, it's not the documentary series.
No, not the documentary, but it was. Yeah, it's a movie. I guess I don't know this.
It's a very
fiction though.
A very low budget independent film about these guys who are detecting an alien signal. Was it a signal?
You know what? I did see this. Is this the one that? And again, cover your ears, people, for spoilers for about the next 5 seconds. It ends with them basically seeing a giant circular black disc in the sky.
Yes.
Yes, I did see this. And I did like it.
Yes, It was very well done and on almost no budget.
Yes, it kind of takes place in a van, the entire thing.
Yeah, and it was just so well acted. It's fairly long. I think it's almost 2 hours, if I remember right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can tell that it's an independent film, but really, like, with what they had, they did a really good job. Yeah. And I really did like, as I just said during the spoilers section, I really did like their sort of depiction of the, the alien, whatever alienness they were showing.
Yeah, and that's barely a spoiler, really. I mean, you kind of get that drift right from the beginning of the movie. The other one that people were recommending at the time was The Vast of Night.
Yes. I like The Vast of Night.
The way it was filmed was awesome.
The way it was filmed was awesome. All of it technically and stylistically. The sort of depictions and how it's sort of thought about the extraterrestrial, hypothesis or, question, not really as exciting, not really how I would do it, but as a film cinematically, it really is. Yeah, it's a really amazing film.
So, and it's very open-ended as well.
Yeah, if people, aren't familiar with it, it's kind of a period piece. It's set in what, 50s or 60s? 50s, right?
50s, I think.
50s, and it kind of has that old, like, radio plays a lot into it, so it has this sort of, like, I don't want to say War of the Worlds feel, but it kind of is a little bit. And a lot of long, uninterrupted tracking shots, the following people, sort of this very virtuosic cinematography.
Yeah, and I love that.
I do too. It's nice. It's good stuff.
It gives you almost that Evil Dead sort of feel, like you feel like something's creeping up on you.
Totally.
Did you watch the Lovecraft Country series?
I did, and I liked that. There was a little bit, like, I'm a little bit, again, I don't want to nitpick special effects too much because I feel like that's kind of a fanboy geek person thing to do. Not that I'm not both of those things, but some of the CGI, some of the VFX done, with computer generated stuff, I'm a little tired of it, but I enjoyed most everything else about it. I think if they had replaced the CGI stuff with practical effects, I would have really loved the series, in all way, shape, or form.
I think it would have been hard to do some of it with practical effects.
Oh, it would have been really impossible to do some with practical. I mean, we're talking about, Lovecraftian, horrors, Shoggoths, essentially.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but there's that whole one episode where she's jumping realities.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But
it was well done, and I like that people haven't read the book too. The book is good.
Okay, all right, and they are talking. It hasn't been renewed yet, but it's kind of one of those up in the air sort of things. Like, they definitely haven't canceled it,
Yeah, and I'm hoping that I really am hoping it comes back.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do a totally different story next time around.
That would be interesting, and that's something that I heard rumors about. It would be cool if it was done kind of in the way that American Horror Story is done, or at least I would like that.
Yeah,
I think that could be really, and that kind of makes sense if you think about it from like a Lovecraftian, standpoint too. Is that part of, I think, some of things that are great about Lovecraftian horror, and we use that term because he sort of was the person that at least was a catalyst in some way to get it going, is that it wasn't just him, it was all of these people. It was like August, even if you don't like August Derleth stuff, there was Clark Ashton Smith and Robert Howard, and they were all these writers that were sharing this universe. And so I think there's a lot of there's a lot of space there. I mean, at least that's one of the reasons why I love it, why I've worked with weird fiction from the Lovecraftian space, like The King in Yellow, even though it's sort of retconned into that whole sphere of cosmic horror. I think is really cool, and if they can tap into the sort of anthology nature of it and the different stories, even if they're all stories that were Lovecraft's originally, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Did you see Underwater, the movie?
No, I didn't.
So, speaking of Lovecraft, is it Kristen Stewart?
That was, it was Kristen Stewart, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, yeah.
So I don't, I couldn't recognize Kristen Stewart. I don't think I've really watched it, because I never watched any of the Twilight movies or anything like that.
Right.
But I know most people don't like her for one reason or another, it seems. So I put this on not only knowing that it had a Lovecraftian bend, and I loved it. And people are like, isn't that Kristen Stewart? And I'm like, I guess. And she was fine in this. She has a shaved head, and I mean the movie starts off like her kind of talking to herself in the mirror in this underwater station, and then all hell breaks loose. And the whole movie is just it's survival horror. It's just one thing after another, but it has a very Lovecraftian bend by the end.
Yeah, it definitely, from what I heard about it, it sounds like something that I'll like. I don't mind Kristen Stewart. I think you can get beyond the fact that that she was in Twilight, which is pretty easy to do.
Yeah, and that seems to be the big thing. Like people didn't like her in Twilight, or they just don't like Twilight.
Yeah, no, she's a decent actor. I like her stuff.
Have you seen The Lodge?
I have not seen The Lodge either. This just shows you how bad my backdated catalog of films that I need to watch is. But again, this is one that I've heard quite a bit about it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, no, tell me about it a little bit. Not too many spoilers.
I'm going to read the plot summary. A soon-to-be stepmom is snowed in with her fiancé's 2 children at a remote holiday village. Just as relations begin to thaw between the trio, some strange and frightening events take place. That's accurate. And it's extremely well done. It's very kind of disturbing in the way that it's shot in a way that makes you feel a little bit off when you're watching it.
Yep.
And
yeah. I mean, I've heard really good things about it, and the people who did it, Veronica Franz and what is it, Severine Fiala, they've done some stuff before that I've really liked, and so I can imagine that it'll be really good. It's essentially about it's kind of about Christian cult. Right?
Yes. Yeah. The girl was part of a cult that her now husband liberated her from.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of I think this came onto my radar at one point because I want to say Hammer Films. This is a new Hammer film.
Oh.
I could be wrong.
Oh.
And if people are not familiar with Hammer Films, they were like one of these classic British studios that came out with this whole swath of like 60s, 70s horror films using the, essentially the Universal monsters. It was like Frankenstein and Dracula, but they were all like a lot more intense and bloody. And Christopher Lee played Dracula. If people don't know Saruman from Lord of the Rings, and Count Dooku Yeah, awesome stuff. And Lodge, I'm going to watch it, but people should watch it too to support Hammer Films.
I want to throw out a few podcasts that I picked up, some fiction stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
There's a bunch. The problem is I've listened to a bunch of them, caught up with them, and now, I don't have anything written down. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but The White Vault is one of the best Lovecraftian podcasts out there. It is just really incredibly well done. And that has, I think, 3 seasons. I could have sworn they said this was going to be the last season, but now I'm not sure. They may have also changed their mind. Are you familiar with
those?
That
Were the people that I'm familiar with it. I haven't listened to it. They did the No Sleep podcast, right? The same people?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's Fool and Folly, I think, productions that do it.
Yeah, I'd heard about that. Yeah.
The BBC.
I have to say I haven't listened to. I have. That is one thing that for all the stuff that I listen to, that I have not started listening to a lot of fiction podcasts. I know, I have friends like you that are super into them, and maybe I'll start with this one.
Yeah, that's a good one to start with. I mean,
yeah.
If you're not into fiction podcasts and you want really good ones, there's that. There's Ars Paradoxica, which is a time travel one. There's Archive 81, which is coming to is finally maybe actually going to be a series on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Wolf 359.
Wolf 359, yeah.
I mean, all of them paranormal. I mean, Archive 81's probably my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the weirdness is amped up to such a level. I almost didn't listen to the second season because it was so weird. And then I said, let me give it another shot. And I'm like, I don't know why this was too weird for me first time through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really wondering how they're going to do it as a series, but I'm curious to see how that's going to work out.
Interesting. If we're going into other media too, there's this old media called books that used to be printed up on paper, and I still sometimes read them. And I would give a browsing endorsement for Richard Kadri's books. He's a writer. Used to be based out of San Francisco. He's based out of Austin now, and he wrote this series called the Sandman Slim series, which are these kind of pulpy novels that are about this character who was like, kitchen sink paranormal stuff in there, vampires, zombies, UFOs, Nephilim, secret societies, all sorts of stuff. But he also has a really good kind of like, it almost has like a good punk rock, subtext to it. Definitely somebody who's like tapped into pop culture, but also into, I think, into the occult and paranormal, like deep knowledge of mythology, the occult, paranormal, and he has a lot of other series that he writes, Richard Kadri. But the Sandman Slim series, which is going to be ending soon, is probably one of his most notable ones, and you can find them in audiobooks too if you need.
Nice. There's one I started reading recently, and I can't find the name of it. But I'll probably be having the author on at some point to talk about. I'm not that far in, but I've been very impressed with the writing.
Nice.
But for some reason, I can't find it on my phone.
You were mentioning American Gods earlier.
Oh yes, American Gods. There's been a bunch of synchronicities that happened with American Gods.
To you? Interesting.
Yeah, and some really weird ones that I don't actually want to get into, but it's one of those things. I think Joshua Cutchin was saying I really needed to watch it, and I'm going, I don't really care for fantasy, know. And then finally I said, let me watch it. And I think the first time I tried to watch it, something was up and I couldn't watch it, and I was like, all right, clearly I'm not meant to watch this right now. And so I watched something else, and then I came back to it, and I said, let me try this again, and it was like the perfect time for me to watch it.
Yeah,
because it has this vibe of we basically create our own realities.
Right. It's sort of like a egregores type thing.
Yeah. And like I said to you, there's a line from a Holy Terror song that says, "Even gods in their infinity need a mortal's following," and that could pretty much sum up the show.
Right. With this idea that the and I think we were talking about this at one point. I forget if we were talking about this when we were recording, but I don't know if it's repeating. It's repeating. Yeah, it's interesting too, because that idea of the worshipers themselves, feeding and giving life to these gods, and how these gods follow people. This kind of idea about immigration, and old gods following to the new country, but then there are new gods that are created, in the new country. It's the book and the series. I've only watched the first, as I was telling you, first season. I haven't watched the second season yet, but really, great stuff. And I think, especially like you said, for somebody that maybe doesn't like fantasy usually, this isn't fantasy as much as I would call it like mythology. It's like, paranormal myth.
It also, they're on a plane at the beginning, and Wednesday, the god that this guy Shadow Moon is dealing with, they're talking about the plane, and he goes, like the idea that this plane can fly is kind of ridiculous. So is it flying because this is how things work, or is it flying because everyone on here believes that it can fly,
Yes. Yes. There's this other author that does sort of, he's a very famous urban fantasy author, Jim Butcher, that did the Harry Dresden series. And I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff, these pulpy sort of supernatural. And he, in it, one of the fictional, people should read those books if they haven't, by the way. I think they're very good. In it, there's this way that they sort of couch kind of like Lovecraftian elder gods, and they call it the Oblivion Wars, and it's basically these secret wars that are being fought where certain good factions are trying to make sure that people don't remember like the names and the existence of these elder gods, and only these few, select few in the secret society are given the permission to remember that the elder gods exist, so they can fight against people, enough people remembering so that they'll come back and destroy the universe. And I always like that. It sort of resonates.
There was a TV series for that.
Was there?
Yeah, the Dresden Files, wasn't there?
There was. It came out. So if people don't know, it's a series. This author Jim Butcher, who writes a bunch of different fantasy and sci-fi and stuff. They did a Sci-Fi Channel did a series that was really not very it wasn't true to the books in many ways, and I think people liked it. It was cool. It was only on for one season, though. It didn't really go anywhere, but the books are like, there's like, I want to say there's like 13 or 14 books in the series so far. Wow. And it's a really involved world building that incorporates a ton of mythology, fairy folklore, mysticism, supernatural, alien. Again, it's this sort of kitchen sink stuff, in the world that's built there, which again is I find very cool. And Jim Butcher has definitely, done his homework when it comes to a lot of the stuff that's being taught, that's being talked about in those books. So nice. I enjoy them not only for, I guess, maybe even more than the craft of the writing, for the amount of research that has gone into these, like the world building, and it feels very richly connected in this sort of like Patrick Harper way, almost.
So the book I was trying to find the name of is called Unpleasantness, Ghost Stories for the Depressed. Yeah, Ghost Stories for the Depressed by Nathaniel A. Giles. And he sent me this, and he has some personal experiences as well. So at some point, when I finish the book, I'm going to have him come on and talk about the book and his experiences. I've read only a little bit of it, but his writing style is excellent. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So
Unpleasantness, Ghost Stories for the Depressed. I'm looking at that right now. That's very interesting. Huh.
And he just published it himself. So, I mean, if people are looking for something original, this would be something to check out.
That looks very cool. Yeah. The books I was talking about are definitely not independent. Right. They're quite mainstream.
As far as newer podcasts I've checked out, Call of the Void was very good and creepy. It's not anything that's like, mind-blowingly different when it comes to the to like the paranormal. But it has some interesting ideas in there, and it's done really well. There was one called... Oh, man, there were a couple I really enjoyed. There's a few I really liked that just stopped, and I don't understand how that happens, you know?
Yeah, well, with podcasts, I feel like a lot of times, since they're done so independently, that it can really just dry up if, something happens to the singular person who's producing it, right?
Yeah, true. Man, where are the other two? There was one called From Now that was pretty interesting. That's actually done by a bigger company, if I remember right. They publicized the hell out of that, and it was about a astronaut who we're sending our first spaceship to another planet to see if it's colonizable, and the spaceship disappears as it gets into orbit, and then like 20 years later, it suddenly reappears. And so that's where that one goes, and it's well done. Like I said, it's done by an actual production company, so it's not an independent thing. There's one called Midst, M-I-D-S-T, Midst. And that...
Like in the midst.
Right. And it's like I really like the structure of it. However, the story was kind of losing me a little bit. I think because it sort of has a fantasy element to it. It's like this whole other world. But you have numerous narrators. And they almost like complement / argue with each other as they go. So,
that's nice. I like that.
It's a really original style. I was really impressed right off the bat because it's also funny. Because it's like they would never do that. Yes, they would. Okay, well maybe they would do that. And it's just like, but you have to pay very close attention because it's easy to get lost because it's so rapid fire.
It's like sort of bringing a new twist to the unreliable narrator thing, which I think is always, that's very good.
Yeah, it's
a good way to go.
Yeah, and it's not even so much unreliable as much as they just like one will say kind of one thing and it's kind of this is what the character's trying to portray, and then the next one corrects it to what the character's actually portraying, type of thing.
Contradictory in that sense.
Yeah. So that impressed me, but like I said, I only got a few episodes in, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I was losing interest or just having trouble following while I was driving.
Yeah.
Because it was so in-depth.
There's been, I feel like there's been a lot more great podcasts that have come out recently, partially because, we haven't been, there's been a lot of like actual in-person sort of production happening over the past year. So we're getting a lot of newer, cool podcasts because that's something that people can do. Even though I say, I don't listen to them, but I hear more and more people talking about really, great stuff coming out of the fiction podcast area. That's cool.
There's one called Down, which was supposed to be a 20-part thing, and they did 15 of them and then just stopped last May. Now, the point they stopped at is a very Lovecraftian sort of point. It's about a submarine that there's a hole in the Antarctic that goes down deeper than we've ever been, and they have this special sub, and they're going to go down and investigate it, and there doesn't seem to be an end to the hole.
Yeah, nice.
So, it was great, and then it hits that episode, and it kept saying this is a 20-part series, and that's like episode 15, and nothing else has happened, and they haven't said anything, and I'm like, where's the last 5 episodes?
That is so frustrating. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
There was another called Derelict. They did one episode. It was really interesting. It's a sci-fi one. And they're like, oh, we're going to have an episode every other week. This was like 2 years ago. They never put out a second episode. And finally, I figured out they had a Kickstarter to do the series, and they didn't make their Kickstarter.
Oh, that must have been it, huh?
So it's like, okay, but you could have, you still could have done something or at least posted something. Hey, we didn't make our Kickstarter,
Yeah. Are there any like paranormal shows that you watch anymore? That was something that I was never personally into. I just never started watching any of the paranormal shows. Like the reality shows, of course I watch, like the X-Files and stuff like that. But did you ever watch any of those? Is there anything recent? Because I know you have watched some of them in the past.
I watched Ghost Hunters when they started, up until they blatantly started faking things.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion, and I mean, that's the Trickster and everything else, as well as just TV ratings. And most of that was Grant, it seems, more than anything else.
Yep.
I liked Ghost Adventures, partially because they'd have all this historical stuff on Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
You know, they'd go to these old locations, and you'd get the history of the place. And honestly, they were such idiots that they just made me laugh sometimes. But they would blatantly fake stuff sometimes. And the fact that you could tell made me stop and go, okay, so when you can't tell, maybe they're not faking it, because you can clearly tell when they're faking it. Yeah. But the only one I watch like that now is Curse of Oak Island.
Okay, yeah.
And to
is there Curse of Oak Island? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, sure. That's still on? Oh my god.
Yeah, and they keep finding more really interesting stuff. Like, this island is historically incredibly interesting.
So is it actual historical stuff they're finding, or is it like weird stuff? Is it like a hole that just is constantly like spewing out ooparts?
No, it's
not ooparts. I'm sorry. Not
artifacts.
Artifacts. What's the name for it? It's the name that RBJ uses all the time. Apports.
Apports. No.
Yeah, apports. Yeah.
So they're exploring the whole island at this point, because no one knows exactly where the actual money pit was.
Yeah.
And like this season, they've been digging up the swamp. And they found a stone road that is a very manufactured thing leading from the swamp and around the side. They haven't figured out how far it goes yet, but this is like a massive construction that is now ending in a swamp. And under, they're looking at, I think they said 1500s maybe, that this was built. They have archaeologists there. They have geologists there. I mean, they're doing this properly. Which, of course, can be kind of frustrating, because you're like, just dig it up. I want to know what's there, But they have to get permission to do various things, even though they own the island. Nova Scotia, technically, they have to abide by all those rules and stuff. So, like, the treasure part isn't that interesting. What's interesting to me is that this island has been really utilized heavily in the past, and no one knows about it. Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, what sort of trade routes or what sort of undocumented connections were going on, these sort of like underground, I don't know, routes or systems of travel that people were doing that, just were not covered by history. Because it seems like with Oak Island, and again, I haven't watched the show, but I know about it from sort of reading about it, is that it was like, it really does point to there being a lot of travel, like in the same way that people talk about, I don't know, what was that island that used to be in the Caribbean that was, sort of a hub for the underground pirate community or something like that. I don't know.
Didn't it sink or something?
I think so. I mean, the fact that you're backing me up on this makes me think that I'm not just like dreaming it up, but I feel like there used to be, there was one that like no longer is there because of the rise of sea level or something. Anyway, that's really cool. I mean, I love stuff like that, that ends up being historical, and you're finding out, sort of uncovering these historical mysteries.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't found much in way of treasure, but I could care less about treasure.
Right?
Like, there's this deep history to this island that nobody knew was there because it's been hidden. The people who were there hid it. And it's like, all right, now I'm curious. Now it's a real mystery. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they'd love to find some treasure and get a return on their, multi-million-dollar investment. But,
right, of course,
like this, they found a whole wharf off one of the areas really off the island, and it's like, okay, this was a massive thing at one point. This was not just some guys burying treasure. This was a lot of people coming and going at this island at some point in our history, and there's no record of it.
That is really, I love that stuff. Yeah, that's, I mean, that sort of, hits the same spot for me as, John Anthony West pyramid stuff. I love it.
The only problem is, of course, being a reality show, it has all those reality show elements.
Yes.
They repeat a lot of stuff. They talk down to you. They, they always stop at the, oh my God, what's this? Coming up on the Curse of Oak Island, and you're like, just stop.
It's the formula, and they're looking for the sound bites. Right?
Yes,
of course.
doom. It's like, yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Well, it's like,
if you could just condense the information for me, I'd be perfectly happy.
right. Well, maybe at some point there will be. I still, have faith that at some point, and I will try my hardest to help this happen. But I don't know if I have the right ideas for it yet. Is there some sort of shift in how I guess paranormal or Fortean stories that are real, that is reality, can be told in a way that's not reality television? And I don't know if I have the formula for that yet, because obviously the reenactment thing is like kind of the only thing, at least. And you and I have talked about this a bit. The only way you can go, like, how else do you do it? If you're talking about these things that are experiential, but it's something that I ponder a lot.
One of the other podcasts I wanted to give a shout out to is one called Believer, a paranormal mystery. It didn't get very far before COVID hit, and that seemed to stop their production to some degree. But it's more Bigfoot related. And I'm trying to. The thing is, like, I remember liking it, but it's been a while since I listened to it. Oh, right, okay, so yeah, it's this girl who's sort of a fake psychic, and she ends up looking for her missing ex-girlfriend. And this takes her in sort of into Bigfoot territory, and but it's not simple Bigfoot thing. There seems to be a lot of high strangeness going on.
That sounds great.
What they were doing too is she narrates like Fred Beck's 1924 Sasquatch encounter as a bonus episode, which is the actual Bigfoot encounter and how weird it is. So it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. But the last one came out on Halloween, which was a prequel episode. So I'm hoping they start doing stuff again, because it actually was very well done, very independent, but kind of a cool listen.
I'm saying right now that I want to hear and see more expanded Bigfoot fiction. I think now is the time. We had the vampires got really popular around Twilight, and then the zombies got really popular. I think it's time to I think it's Bigfoot's time.
Well, it definitely is with reality shows and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. As long as there's no sparkling Bigfoot.
And there's plenty of, what are the romance novels based around Bigfoot?
Yes, there is that. Okay, well, none of those things. I'm talking about something else. I guess I'll have to. There was. Did you see there was a film? I believe it was called "The Man Who Killed Hitler and Also the Bigfoot."
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, which, of course, everybody is up in arms from the Bigfoot community because in the title says the Bigfoot.
Oh, does it say the Bigfoot?
Yeah, right. It stars Sam Neill, which, obviously, if you like watching Sam Neill and his mustache be Sam Neill, it's pretty awesome. But yeah, it's a funny kind of indie, again, one of these like weird culty midnight movie things, and essentially the title is what you got. It's about like this, this special forces guy played by Sam Neill who, at one point killed Hitler and then comes out of retirement to kill Bigfoot for some reason. I forget. I forget why.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with a lot of fiction is it doesn't have the depth of really what this phenomena is about, but every once in a while you get hints of it. And I think I think the same way that it's hard to understand the depth of this, it's very hard to fictionalize it.
Very, very true. And I think that goes along with, some of the theories and things that I think about in terms of filmmaking and like existentialism, is that, this idea that in many ways you can't capture certain things like, the transcendental, I mean, this is corny, but like the transcendental experience of watching a beautiful sunset off of a mountain. Like, you take a picture of that with your phone or you film that or something, and it's not the same. You have to like actually do something different in terms of filmmaking to create the feeling of being there, not just documenting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that too, and I think a lot of these, especially when you get to bigger movies, they're playing to lowest common denominator type of stuff.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
So it's like, well, obviously the UFOs are aliens.
Definitely. Well, I think because a lot of people want to see that. That's like,
Oh, yeah.
It's the whole thing of like, when you go to McDonald's, you want a Big Mac, you want the Big Mac, you don't want to get some, weird concoction that's an interpretation of a Big Mac. And I think that sometimes people, very, like no problem with this, want to go see movies because they want that sort of familiar, feeling. And I think that there's totally a place for movies like that, and media and entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to really get the depth of some of it. Every once in a while, a movie captures it, or a TV show captures it, and it's always like, ooh, like that Dark Encounter I mentioned earlier. That has some of the real weirdness to it, and you're like, ooh, that actually did well.
Yeah.
Or how the Mothman prophecies, despite not being anything like the actual story, still happen to capture the weirdness of the Mothman prophecies.
Right. Exactly. And this is, how I talk oftentimes about my love of David Lynch and how I feel like David Lynch is capturing, he's capturing sort of the imaginal, the realm of high strangeness better through his fiction and his weird framing of like, an empty doorway than, somebody trying to literally show it to you with VFX recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that seems like a good place to end.
Absolutely.
Where can people find your films, Chris?
You can find my films. They're both on Amazon, and if you're a Prime Amazon Prime member, they're both for free. Corpse and The Hill in the Hole, and you can also go to brightrectangle.com, which has some of our shorts and older stuff and contact there.
All right, cool. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Thanks for doing this.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. It's because of you this show is able to exist. And I want to give a special shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Super Inframan, Allison Cook, Eric Hervin, John Blackburn, Ken Hunt, Chris Cordner, Dan Eckert, Tim, Jim and Sophie, Beverly Williamson, Joel Thomas Runyon, Empty K, Nagatha Christie, Patricia W., Frank Earl, Barbara Fisher, Will Powell, Big Boy Limina, Craig Parmenter, Walker, Joanna Rojas, Maddie, David Moore, Vincent Trewell, Stone Wilderness, Luke Osborne, Becky Trainer, Rob Drummond, Alex Whitcomb, Edu Camelhort, Tactical Therapist, Janet Bunderson, 36 Dingo, Taylor, Sam Sharon, Jennifer Campbell, American Rambler, Kevin, Chris Ernst, Andy McNamara, Sedger, Dominic O'Malley, Riker and Stark, J. Otto Bullitt, Jose A., Charles Davis, Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Ray Benedetto, Linz Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Giaquinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Ad Noctum, Carla Mahoney, and James Lattimore. Thank you all so very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.